Welcome to ChiefPricingOfficer.com. Today's guest is one of the rare pricing leaders who has actually helped build pricing into an enterprise function, not just an analytics team, not just a sales support group, but a true leadership capability inside a global organization, one of the largest private companies in the world. Lynn Guinn has spent decades leading pricing, negotiation, and commercial transformation efforts where the stakes were real. Margin pressure, market volatility, procurement sophistication, and executive accountability. What I'm looking forward today is not theory, but what Lynn has learned about why pricing leadership succeeds in some organizations and quietly dies in others. Lynn, welcome.
John,
Hi, Lynn. How are you?
I am good.
Good. So you've had purview over 100 plus business units and over $100+ billion organization. Are the issues associated with making change and leading price in any one of them different by the business unit, or are many of the same themes in place? And then from there, we can drill down.
On the question of the similarities and differences, no two businesses are 100% exactly the same. They're not. But the similarities that you find in the challenges, the issues that arise throughout pricing or commercial excellence, I would say they're at least 2/3 to 80% very similar. So you know what avenues to attack that are going to yield the most benefit actually relatively quickly. That, the challenge you get into is not always does the leadership team or the executive team identify the same challenges as are actually present in the business, and therefore you got to actually sometimes say, look, here's drivers of the issues. I mean, you're seeing symptoms, you're calling out symptoms. Here's what the ailments really are. And to get them to the point to say, if we're going to address the issues that you have or the opportunities that you have, you actually have to get to what actually is the ailment, not just the symptom that you're seeing on the surface. So that's a little bit of the discussion that happens if it is not immediately identifiable from both the pricing team and the leadership team. So there's a little bit of that has to be massaged as you go through. Sometimes it's a lot easier. They say, hey, we've got this issue, we need help on this, and you say, yep, that's the right issue, let's go do it. But oftentimes it's not. But I come back to the point that I've worked with, dozens and dozens and dozens of businesses across the world. 2/3 to 80% of the issues are similar. They really are. Maybe greater than that.
This is great, Lynn, because now we're getting underneath the covers here a little bit. You said there's a difference between the issues, which are the symptoms, and some of the underlying problems. Do you have examples of where issues are brought to your eye line and you're like, you're right. Those are legitimate issues, but here's what's really going on. Can you give me an example?
Oh, we've got tons of them. That's just where do you start? There's always the measurement of margin. That is actually one of the simplest ones to get into right off the bat. Is what does a business actually call margin? And even inside a business unit within an organization, they may not even be measuring margin in the same way. And just have the same understanding of what's driving margin. And I'm not saying just price, because price is an impact or a margin. I'm saying, what are you calling margin? Are you calling it, your gross margin? Are you calling it your true pocket margin? Or are you calling it a net margin? What are you actually calling margin? And the definition between the functions, and even inside a function sometimes, is not the same. So some of it is you just step back to some of that as a very basic understanding of, let's speak the same language even inside this business so that we can go from there. Because once you identify that, then you can build off of that and go work and solve the real issues that are causing pain in the business. But some of those are so, I mean, it sounds crazy, but sometimes it's that simple as just to get the same vernacular, the same understanding, the same base level of information, the base metric, the same, and then build off of that and go from there.
That's fascinating. And are you then advising all of our price leaders listening to you right now that the first step is probably getting to a common set of definitions before you move forward, because that takes away a lot of the conflict you're going to find later?
I mean, if you don't, you're going to wind up with ambiguity. You know, you may have your sales organization speaking this, your product organization speaking this, your finance organization speaking this, and then your C-suite is saying, "Guys, what are we doing?" You know, it's just level it out. Start with, and like it's basic as can be for most of us in the pricing profession to actually understand all those different margins. But the business level knowledge that we as a profession possess may not be as great as many of our counterparts in other aspects of business. So you just have to do a little bit of education.
Okay. So it sounds like discovery and education are two very important points in order to start your program, where you're understanding what good looks like through everybody's lens, because they have different definitions, and then education on what each piece part is sees as what's important to them based on the way that they talk about things. Do I have that right?
And once you get to like I'd say once you get to that base level definition, I mean it's not that it should take that shouldn't take forever, but it should take the time. Otherwise, you're going to be revisiting it for weeks, months, maybe even years on end if you don't. So just address it up front. Say this is what our metric is. This is our measurement. This is how we get to it, and then from there you say that here's how we're going to work on improving it or addressing whatever the issues are that keep us from being as good as we possibly can be.
Yes, the simple but non-trivial aspects of what it is we do.
This is not the most technical thing you're going to come across in pricing, but it's critical that that you get inside the heads of the people that you're dealing with, and you get just the foundation of knowledge at least evenly spread. Doesn't have to be totally absorbed, but at least you have to evenly spread it.
Right, right. So do you find then that when you're talking to a sales organization that is motivated by and perhaps incented and paid by one definition of what margin means, and you have the finance organization or the supply chain organization that's motivated by another, that's where some of the disconnects occur?
I can certainly be that. And you'd find in a lot of organizations, you don't even still today have as many of the sales organizations as measured on margin as they should be.
Ah,
There's still a lot that are not margin measured, or the margin metric may not be as strong as a revenue metric that may be in place for them. Not saying that's wrong. It's different businesses need different things, but at the end of the day, you've got to make money, and sales are only good sales in my book if they make money. You don't sell just to sell.
right, right. And I've heard a phrase that said, however, don't be surprised when people do what you pay them to do. And if you pay them to expand revenue, every dollar is a good dollar.
That's it. That's it. So, I mean, that's where I come back to, understanding that and I say the margin metric again, come back to it. But if you had a sales organization that was driven by revenue, that then would be a symptom, but the ailment would be that the metric that they were being driven by should be adjusted so that you drive to higher levels of profitability. So exactly, I mean, it comes back to where that base level of understanding I said before, because if you start at that point, then it's easy to bring everybody back down to saying, okay, here's the common denominator that makes our business profitable. And if our business is to be profitable, these things have to happen. And if we want that to happen with this organization, we may need to look at the way that we actually measure what is good in the performance, in the performance of that organization or those individuals in that organization.
Well, Lynn, let's then take it up one level. When your leadership would come to you in any business unit and ask you to do something, would they ask the question about pricing, cleaning up a process, or would they be asking a more strategic question, like, I need you to price for growth versus price for profitability versus price for market share? Were the questions more strategic or were they more operational?
Generally, and it depends. And if you're talking about the highest levels, it's generally more targeted to the strategy.
Mm-hmm.
And my my preferred definition is profitable growth. I think you can do both. I think you can do both. It's not an either or. I think there is a way to grow profitably. It takes a lot more thought. It takes more discipline, and it takes it takes a greater level of execution throughout the entire organization to make it happen as well. But there is the opportunity to do that. If you when a business comes, and I have had this happen that they've come and said, "Hey, we just want to take market share," and I'm going, "Well, that's really easy to do. That's really easy to do. Not going to probably be the most profitable thing to do, but it's really easy to do." I said, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to come up with a strategy to make that happen. So you've got
Yeah,
I said that, but putting the other two, because you gave three options, right? You said
right.
drive for profitability, drive for growth, and drive for market share. Putting profitable growth together, or driving profitability and growth together, I prefer to say that when you do strategic pricing or revenue growth management, I would prefer to say profitable revenue growth management. PRGM, it's an abbreviation for program too, but
Yes.
profitable revenue growth management is really the key to put everybody on board. And you can do it throughout the organization when you do that, because it says we want profitability, we want to grow the top line, and it needs to have a margin attached to it, right?
Does that lend itself, Lynn, to something I've heard you say before, which is when you think about pricing, pricing is a team sport and all players have to be participative in that sport?
Yeah, no, it's definitely, I mean, the pricing function is, it's like I used to say I was just a high-powered offensive coordinator. I wasn't necessarily the player on the field. I was the offensive coordinator calling plays to let the team run, or suggest the plays that the team runs on the field. That, if you take that perspective, it actually immediately elevates the thought process of the decision structure that you're going to deploy, because it's not every single play, it's what's the desired outcome. And if you use a football analogy, which I like sports, and we talk about this as team sports, the goal is to score touchdowns, right? That's the
Right.
goal. The goal is to score touchdowns. Now, that doesn't mean you score a touchdown on every play you run. The goal is to get down the field, get across the goal line, score a touchdown. Next possession, you go down the field, you drive down the field, you score a touchdown. That takes a team effort. That takes a line that's blocking, protecting the ball. And if you think of that, if you think of the ball as the profitability of the company, protect the ball carrier, protect the quarterback, and then allow the playmakers, which are oftentimes your customer facing team, to do what they do best and put them in a position to win. That's the key.
And then you take and layer over the top of that the notion of profitable growth and the definition, everybody defining what that means to them. Then I would suspect that you've got the line knowing who to block and how to block to be protective of the profit, if I can continue to mix a metaphor here, while the ball is being advanced down the field.
Exactly. And it's one thing that, in I was fortunate enough in the large organization that I got to retire from after 30 plus years to be able to build a structure for training. And in fact, we called it the Strategic Pricing Bootcamp as the base level of knowledge that was spread throughout the organization for that purpose. And making sure that the team, again, knows this is why we're calling the plays. This is what these plays should do. This is what the desired outcomes are. Here's how we expect the competition to respond. Or if you think of it, if you're playing offense, this is what we expect, the competitors to do. Here's what we expect customers to do. Here's, here's the plays that we want to run, and here's how we want to achieve those goals. And again, I mean, it's the same team analogy. When you educate the team about why we're doing what we're doing before you talk about what we're going to do, it makes it a lot easier. And then you talk about how.
So help me with that a little bit, Lynn. I have conversations often with our peers, and they're asking questions about senior executives and getting alignment around senior executives. Does that mean that they're going through your boot camp too?
I will tell you, I don't have it down here with me. I have trophy cups that are Yeti trophy cups that say Strategic Pricing Bootcamp. We had those made for all the graduates of this, and we run it multiple times a year for several years. Even the CEO of this largest privately held company in America has one of those trophy cups on his desk. And I had a picture before I retired in my office, and it was him holding that. And we oftentimes would put it up in there and say, look, you're not alone in this. This is something that from an organizational perspective, business leaders, I'm moving outside the commercial side when I say this, but trading functions, supply chain, even our procurement organization would go through it so that, the leader of corporate procurement office was right beside mine. So if you think about that, I mean, it was those kind of shared ideas all the way throughout the organization. Not that everything we did they knew or everything that they were doing, but we were sharing. This is why we want to do what we're doing. This is how we want to go into these markets. This is the segments that we're going to attract. Here's the segments that, we think that we're probably going to not be as attractive to this segment as our competitors. And that may be okay. That may be okay. We're not going to win everything. We want to win the ones that we want to win.
And that is strategic choice.
Yes, indeed.
Right.
Indeed.
And through pricing, you get to make those strategic choices, right? Being able to appeal to those you truly want to appeal to or profit from, and either not paying attention to or understanding when other markets are just not going to be engaging. Do I have that right?
I mean, particularly in a B2B environment, but it exists in B2C as well. Mm-hmm. There are customers that you can serve well that really fit with what your business can deliver. And those are the ones that you should be attracting. And there's customers that don't fit well, maybe in exactly the same geographic market or in the same vertical or same channel, but they are not the best fit for your business. And those are ones that, you know what, it's okay. Let the competitors win them. They may align better. And some of those customers that don't align well with what you have from a product and service offering and the value structure that you're creating, and it becomes a conversation about the value that you're creating with those customers. If you don't align well with that group of customers, you will spend an inordinate amount of effort trying to take care of them in a way that they want to be taken care of, that will not yield the profitability that you will gain from taking care of the customers that you actually do align with. So you have to understand that, and that takes, again, some strategic choices. You said that word before, but it's not only about strategic pricing, but it's about strategic choices around who you do business with. And you should, not every customer should be, your gold standard customer. It just doesn't work that way.
Um, Brilliant advice, Lynn, and it brings about two questions that follow. The first question is one more of history and journey. How long did it take for you to go from the idea of introducing boot camps to actually having it where it was something where that was part of the dialogue of the company? That's first question. And then we'll get to the second question, which has to do with strategic choices. But let me just ask that question directly then. How long did it take you to go from this is a really good idea to everybody's doing the boot camp?
No, it was, in all honesty, it was probably 4 years. Probably 4 years. It wasn't overnight, but from the initial, and I almost can remember the dates and locations of the initial ones, and the size of the boot camps were much smaller than they became from the early days. But we would have. So just in comparison, in the early days of boot camps, we would do them on site, and we would have 20, 24, maybe 30 at most kind of people. And then as we grew it and we actually made it interactive, and we did this before COVID and all that, so we already had web established and do it, and a lot of it was live interaction like this via the connections on the computer for the training. But we would move from that size of a cohort to we had to limit it down to like 90 at a time going through. So,
Wow.
I mean, it would, because it was just a matter of that was about the biggest that we could handle from a teaching perspective, and making sure that the quality of the knowledge transfer was at the level that we expected. Because if we went any higher than that, we got spread too thin in the knowledge transfer, and the individuals were not able to gain as much out of them, or they wouldn't have been able to gain as much in our thought process if we'd gone any larger than that. But yeah, I mean, it was, and that would be multiple times a year that you'd be putting that many people through, and it was 6 week kind of deal. So a drastic difference, not overnight. And I will say the incorporation from the early days of being primarily outside in boot camp of external perspectives, to being able to over time really transition that to say an inside. I'd say it was like a 60-40 inside versus outside, but to come up with the global best practices in all the aspects that were necessary to be educating the team on. It became about 60% internal and 40% external, so that we were able to use real live internal examples and replicate those, and they resonated with everybody, because you're not talking about somebody else's company, somebody else's organization, somebody else's geography. This is us. This is what we have done. Here's our example that we can teach on and educate the rest of the members of the broader team across the world. And this was a global team, right? There's every country, 70 different businesses. So it was a significant amount of opportunity to pull examples from in different aspects of the training and the skill building that we were trying to elevate the entire team on.
Wow. That's very impressive. You must feel pretty good about being able to spread that kind of knowledge across a company that's that big.
But I mean, the gratification personally for me, and I've said this multiple times before I retired and then after I retired too, is that seeing the growth in the individuals that were able to elevate their careers because they had that type knowledge taken into a business, it made people. I mean, I'm not using a mafia term, but
No,
they became the professionals in the organizations that they could become. So it was really good.
very gratifying, very gratifying. And when you started the boot camp, Again, asking questions for our audience here. Was it something that had endorsement by the top of the corner offices, or was it something that started virally and grew over time?
That was the thing that we had was we had a license to go do better. That's what we had the license to do. Go figure out how to do better.
Wow.
And one of the things that we found was that we had immediately when we did some self-evaluation is that we had a disparate level of knowledge in teams that were making critical decisions. And then so therefore, if you have that disparate level of base level of knowledge, the first thing that we said we really need to do is we actually need to elevate our base level of knowledge to a consistent platform so that we're operating. I said it earlier, it's kind of the same way, but we looked in the mirror first. Let me just say that we looked in the mirror and said, what can we do better? And this is something that we can do better. So immediately we elevate we started with pricing teams, of course, and a few managing directors and vice presidents in business, but primarily with our pricing teams, elevated the capability of the teams and the decision quality instantly elevated. So without huge other investments, but immediately the decision quality elevated. And then that allowed to say, okay, if you've got, the aspects of this are people, processes, and really technology. I mean, those are the three aspects of what we do. Mm-hmm. We started with people first. And I would still say people are still the most important, even though we've got tools that are far advanced from the days of when I'm talking about these things happening. But started with people first. Build the people with the knowledge of understanding this is the type decisions that we need to be making. Here's how we should evaluate the quality of the decision. And the quality is not always a revenue based or some other metric based, or one of my least favorite metrics that we ran up against was in multiple businesses was what's my plant operation utilization. I hated that one. I was going like, how do you eat that? Tell me how do you eat a plant operation utilization? I said we can run the wheels off of every plant if you want to. We can run them in the ground and not make money. Let's not think about that as the base metric. So some of those things, even just moving from some of those simple. I mean, like I shake my head and I'm going, show me. I used to say, show me how you eat that. How do you buy food with a plant operation or plant utilization metric? I said, it's just a factor. It's not the factor. It's a factor.
Right.
That goes into your profitability. But simple things like that. But then moving that to the decision quality elevated, and it allowed for so many other process changes after that to really strengthen the entire commercial organization and the whole business. Really, I mean, it extended all the way back to the supply chain operations. Everywhere in the business, but just elevating the knowledge so that the quality of the decisions improved, that enabled you to do all these other things from a process standpoint, and then bringing in technologies that even made that more enabled later on. It just continued to elevate the game.
Wow. Well, that brings up two other questions, but getting to the one I was going to around strategic choices, which is in that process, it sounded like when you elevated the people, when everybody had a better definition of how the business works and where the business makes money, profit margin, at what point were you then better linked into the strategic decision making, choosing what markets to go after or what segments to go after and which ones to leave behind?
Yeah, that was something that actually helped evolve too, because I'm going to put air quotes around strategic pricing. Strategic pricing for in our early days moving globally was really commercial excellence. It was really commercial excellence because it was broader than strategic pricing. But strategic pricing was the right branding and the focus area, of course, because it was pricing and margin, but it was the right branding to elevate people's minds about this is where we need to go to drive the profitable growth of the business. So that was key. Now, the evolution of that actually enabled the expansion to be able to grow commercial excellence in a bigger aspect. We were actually looking at what are the right routes to market, what are the right ways to serve, what are the the right channels to pursue, and how do we serve those channels well, and what pricing goes along with them, right? So all those aspects. So it was, and this is you're talking about more than a decade, that's not a short term deal, but over a decade to get to that point and say, okay, now we're ready to do this in a large scale fashion on things that you can do, in organizations with tens of billions of dollars of revenue, to really expand what's possible.
Well, Lynn, let's back up a little bit. How did all of this start? And I guess I'll ask that from a personal perspective. How is it that you became the driving factor in what was the success you just described for the last half hour?
I think God smiled on me. I think there's a lot of that, but it was one of those deals. My previous background, I'd come out of just come out of the global or international operations and kind of strategic procurement world, and then my original background in the organization was in finance. So I was very fortunate enough to multiple times been just like literally the president of the BU just kind of walk over, put his hand on my shoulder and say, "Hey, you need to do this. This is where you need to be." And it was not like I made the comment many times. I said, like, for over 20 something years, I never had a resume. I didn't have one. They just said, you need to do this, and here's where we need help, and you can do this. And I had confidence of those leaders to say, "You've never done this thing that we're asking you to do. You've never done it before, but we want you to go do it, and we know you can do it." And then having the self-confidence to say, "I'll figure it out, and we'll build a team to make it happen." So I mean, I've been fortunate to, you've heard me say it before. I'm a student of the game. I'm a learner. I'm a learner first, and then try to be a little bit of a teacher second. But to continue to learn and to continue to develop, and just not being afraid of creating success, I think, was another thing, because I have seen so many people that have actually been asked to come and do similar things like this, but the fear of failure was probably greater than the fear of success. And I'm not afraid of success. So I would just say, let's go do it. Let's go figure it out.
Well, Lynn, your track record speaks for itself. And I think all of us admire what it is you were able to do and act as a leader in the pricing space. And one of the questions that I have, and reflecting on what you said, is there's fear of failure in pricing. What would be a removal of that barrier? As somebody takes on pricing, clearly they are being asked to simultaneously be analytically astute while also being relationship savvy around finance and marketing and product and sales. What do you see as a barrier to overcome to get to the mindset of a Lynn Guinn to say, you know what? Let's give it a shot.
One of the biggest things is you have to know you're not going to get all these decisions right. Nobody bats 1,000. Do not go into this thinking that you're going to make every decision correctly. So, for all the good decisions I've made, I've probably made about 20% bad decisions too. So you got to learn from them, and you take that as knowledge, and you go forward, and the real art is don't repeat those mistakes, because the people that repeat the mistakes are the ones that don't learn. So you've got to learn from the things that you do wrong. And I'll give you a story that is it goes back early in my career that I still carry today. I'm not even going to say I carried it all the way through I still carry it today, but I was early on, and I was leading pricing of product line, and it was a multi-billion-dollar channel. And I was dealing with a sales leader in a geographic region, and one of his customers, and we were gonna run a hot deal and promo on this certain product. And as we were going back and forth. This was before we had so much webinar capability. We were primarily on the phone, so it was, I mean, literally holding a desk phone kind of deal. Which I don't think anybody has a desk phone anymore, but I had three of them, and I was holding a desk phone. And it was so long ago that I will tell you that the cell phone that I had was a Motorola flip phone that was about that big. So it was a long time ago. It was a long time ago. But anyway, as I was dealing with this sales leader, and we were trying to position this one product in this certain time frame, it was truly going to be a strategic sell. I mean, it was strategic pricing and strategic selling combined. Anyway, the customer was sitting over here at the value they wanted. We were over here at the value we wanted. I had a hard number over here that I said that I'd go to, and I'm just going to pick the number. I say it was 530. It doesn't matter what it is, but say it was 530. So anyway, as the day progressed, I actually had to leave the office and go to the Red Cross office to get my CPR certification, because I was the floor captain for safety for having first aid and CPR. So I go to the Red Cross office to do CPR training. And while I'm at the CPR training, the sales leader calls me and says, hey, the customer says he's willing to do it at 27. So I'd given him 530. I said, this is where we need to be. It's 530. And he comes back and he says, they'll do it at 27. I'm in the middle of doing CPR with Recessa Annie there, getting my CPR certification. I'm on the phone. I hang up. I said, yeah, okay, good. I said, I'm not that many. I said, I'm not 3 pennies smart. I'm not. Let's sell it. So I said, okay, we'll sell it 527. Or that was my thought, 527. I've complete my Red Cross training, just like 10 blocks from the office, come back up the office, walk back in, and my boss at the time, who was the vice president, looked at me and he said, did you just do a deal with Joe for, I mean, a big volume of product at 427? And I said, not that I agreed to, but let me go look. So I went and I pulled my computers up right away. I looked in the system. There was this massive quantity of product in there at 427. I thought the number was going to be 527 because I give them a 530. This was a lesson, a very, very expensive lesson for me, to make sure that you communicate clearly with the sales team and that they communicate clearly with you the true intentions, because that was a little bit of a curveball in the dirt that my sales leader from that region put in there for his customer. And it was a lot of money. That was a lot of money. I mean, that would have been, I will tell you, that deal lost over $500,000, but it was a fantastic lesson. And so the story goes on from there. I said, oh God, I mean, losing that much money is a bad deal. And I was early in my career, like today, do deals just like that all the time, hopefully making money all the time. But I called the president who was up there. I said, hey, I got to tell you, I said, I know this product's not going to ship for months, but I okayed a terrible deal. I wear it. I own it. I take full responsibility for it. I did not say anything about how it went down. I said, I take full responsibility for it. And he was up, higher level in the building, gets on the elevator, comes down. He says, "Meet me at the elevators." And I'm going, "Oh shit, I'm about to get fired." And listen, I knew I probably just lost over $500,000. I walked over there and I told him, I said, this is it. I said, "I take full responsibility. It's on me. I made the call." And again, this is the support of leadership matters in this. He put his hand on my shoulder again and he said, "I'm going to tell you what." And I thought, oh boy, he's going to say, "Go pack up your stuff and get out."
Right.
Put his hand on my shoulder like this and he said, "You get in there and go back to work." He said, "That deal you just did is going to make us hundreds of millions of dollars, if not billions, because you will take that with you forever." And I did. And I tell you this story today because that's the kind of reinforcement that, I mean, this was the president of this is tens of billions of dollar business that said to the most, and at that time I would have been the most junior pricing person in that multi-billion dollar business, that he reinstilled. But I took full responsibility for the decision. And that's what he said again. He said, "Because you have the credibility, you have the ownership of the decision, that's what's going to make you great at this." And carried that forever. But those are the kind of things that when you started out this question series about asking about leadership support and all that, I think those are the kind of things that are critical to be able to instill in individuals early on. And it's something that I tried to do with the teams that we developed as well, knowing that not every decision that you make is going to be right. That's the thing. You just got to live. You've got to live with it. You got to own it, and you can't let it eat you up. Because I've seen guys and gals get ulcers over these things too, and it's not right. It's business. You make the decision. You own it. Some are good, some are not as good, but you learn from it and you continue on down the road and you get ready to do better tomorrow.
Wow, Lynn, thank you for telling that story. It works on so many different levels when we think about developing as pricers or price leaders, especially because it requires us to understand the entire waterfront of the business and how we make money. And if I hear you correctly, you're going to make mistakes. But also I hear from Lynn Guinn, be a learner first and an educator second, right? And I think that your story exemplified that, which is learn from this and tell others what it is you've learned, and that will elevate all of us.
And it also really helped in the years to come. That same story, I've told that to hundreds of people inside the organization. They say, "Look, you're looking at me up here at the peak of the pricing team in this massive organization. Don't think that I didn't make mistakes. Don't think I don't still make mistakes. These things happen, but the learnings you take from it and the growth that you have as an individual and your business has because of it will exponentially outweigh one or two things that don't work out."
Well said.
Mm-hmm.
Let's move on.
Okay.
And go to the other end of the spectrum. Something that you mentioned right before you told the last story, which is technology plays a role, and technology is now far advanced from where it ever was.
Certainly.
If you were to take your career and talk about the role technology is supposed to play, that's the first half of the question. What role is technology supposed to play? And then where is there something different that's going to be coming in the next 12, 24, or 48 months?
And so technology is an absolute enabler to do what we do from the pricing perfection. If you don't have the tools, you're at an extreme disadvantage. And for those who try to do this in, Microsoft's basic tools, you really generally are not operating with the best tools that are available for you to do your job. Now, I say that it depends on the size of the business. If you're, if you've got a 10-person business, that's different than if you're running a business worth hundreds of millions or billions of dollars. So the more complicated and complex the business is with the customer mix, the product mix, the geographic mix, all the things that creates matrices, you need technology to help you to drive those better decisions. Because how many times have I already said it today? It's the quality of the decisions that make the money. And if you don't have the better tools or the best tools available at your disposal, at your fingertips, and utilize them, just because you have them, you must use them to make your decision quality improve. And it also gives you a better fact base to make better decisions in the future. So you're able to take those technologies and, in the pricing profession, we're lucky that we have some outstanding tools available to us that we can build them. I mean, there's nothing that stops us from building them as well. But the tool set, it would be, I see teams that, in the consulting world I'm doing now, I see teams that are operating and they're pricing and they're selling, but it's like a carpenter showing up with just a hammer and nails, as opposed to the carpenter that's showing up with an air compressor and a nail gun and all that. He's going versus the guy that's going bang, bang, bang. They'll both get the job done eventually, but that guy with the air compressor and the air nailer is going to get that thing up and erected faster than the one that's just hammer and nailed, one at a time. The job's still getting done. It's just how hard are you working at it to make it happen, and the speed that you can move on to the next thing and the next job. So that's one aspect. The more important part you asked about, that's where it's going in the future. The capabilities that exist now and the capabilities that are going to exist tomorrow and the next months are incredible. I mean, with the tools that we can build, it blows my mind. If I said this in an interview, I think last fall, with a TV deal. I said, if the tools were available when I started doing these kind of things like 20 plus years ago, that if they were available today, or what's available today, if that was available then, I can't imagine how far we would be. Mm-hmm. So it makes me think, how far are we going to be 10 years, 20 years from now with the tools that are available today? Business is just going to be even better. What I see as the positive of that is almost everything is positive for the economy. And if the economy grows, businesses grow. There's not very much of this that is negative to the economy, because if you're making better decisions, they are generally better economic decisions. Again, going back to profitable growth, for those businesses that create more growth for other businesses that create more growth for other people and more organizations and so on down the line. So I see it as just this massive positive in a world that says there's a lot of positives and negatives about it. I mean, whether you're looking at AI or the tools or agentic capability that is there, it will displace some of the lower level analytics that have become standard place today. I think that's going to happen in the next 2 years. I think that's going to happen. But what that actually enables people in our profession to do is to actually move even higher in the decision structure, in the thought process, and elevate the game for their organizations, for themselves, and for their careers, because you move to higher level work. And yes, it's actually of more value than what you were doing previously. If on some of these base analytics, that the agentic stuff, I think will take most of that probably by 2030. I bet that'll be commonplace. I think I really do.
Yeah, Lynn, you and I don't have much white space between us on this one, because I see that as a price leader, you need to have the capacity necessary to do all analytics so that we can speak strategically. I have found what has held us back in the previous decades is one where somebody asks a pricing question and it requires a room full of people to analyze a bunch of spreadsheets to come up with an insight that the organization has already moved on from. This allows us to actually have the strategic pricing or the strategic market, or be able to answer a lot of those questions that previously went, gee, if we only had a room full of people, we could figure that out. The notion of figuring that out, I think we're at the verge of.
I agree. I agree. And these tools are so incredible. I mean, I've worked with some businesses post-retirement, in the external world that I've utilized a lot of these AI tools and capabilities personally in my consulting practice, and with very small team, and incredible output in a short amount of time, be able to get to the right answers. And that's really what you're talking about, is get to the right answers. That makes the decisions really easy, because you can say, here's the answers. Now, the decision you should take is, it's A or B. It's not A, B, C, all the way to Z. Here's your options, and there's where the money's at. So the speed of decision making, and this is what's going to happen for businesses that don't do it, and for the people that don't do it, you're going to get farther behind, and you're going to wind up not winning in your market. Whatever that looks like, that may mean you get acquired, that may mean that you're not making the money that you should make, or you're not growing like you should, whatever that looks like, but you're not going to be as good as you can be if you're not utilizing the tools. And I call them, they're enablers of decision making, because the decisions are what still makes the money. The tools enable the decisions to happen with greater certainty at much faster speed.
Yep. Okay, Lynn. You said you're retired, but looks like you're still working pretty hard. You want to tell me a little bit about what you've been up to lately and the kind of work that you've been doing?
Well, it was interesting. So the moment that my retirement announcement came out inside my previous organization, so that came out at 8:30. By 9 o'clock, back then I carried two cell phones. Both cell phones just started ringing like crazy, and saying, "Hey, can you help us with this? Would you be interested in this?" I would say a lot of other options besides retirement came up. But I said, no, I want to have this break. I want, like today I'm out at our place out in the country, and got a farm and some acreage and stuff out here. So I want to spend some time and do that, and actually not just work. I've been working since I was like 10 years old. I'm okay. I work, 30 plus years, 60, 70 hours a week. I'm kind of okay to slow down and enjoy life a little bit. But the calls kept coming. So I said, okay, so say my last official day was the end of October. On November the 12th, I actually formed a new LLC, which is LG Strategic Solutions LLC, to help many of these other businesses that kept calling. And so subsequent to that, kind of over the next, it's been a year and a half, taking on some projects. I do say no to a lot of people, and I suggest that they contact other people who could probably help them better, because that at the end of the day is winning to me, is to make sure that these businesses, these organizations, or the individuals get to the help that can be the most meaningful for them. And it doesn't mean that's always going to be me. I mean, there's people that are a whole lot brighter than I am that can help them out there on some of these things, and a lot of them have more capacity than I'm willing to put the effort into to build too. So yeah, it's been fun, John. I've got to work with, like I say, multiple different businesses, and every week there seems to be one or two more, if not if not more than that, that are reaching out and saying, "Hey, can you help us at least think through this?" And I've wound up, which has been really fun in this, is I've really wound up working with a whole lot of C-suites and boards of directors in really defining what their strategy should be, not what it is, but what it should be. And and some of that takes a little bit look at what you are doing presently, but much like the conversation we just had on the future, saying here's where you should be thinking about taking your business and heading to the future. And you don't want to, when you're dealing with the people that have the responsibility at that level of organizations, you don't want to be talking about how do you solve yesterday's problem. You want to be talking about how do you solve tomorrow's issues and tomorrow's problem. So it's been a really nice transition, and a lot of that is you have to look backwards and say, here's the gaps between where you're at from a people, process, technology standpoint, and here's what you should be doing. And a lot of it is just pure commercial strategy and knowing how to make money too. I mean, it makes a difference. I think it's one of those God-given gifts that my wife has said often. She said, God gave you these gifts and they need to be shared a little bit. If you don't share it a little bit, then you're not doing everything you can for the world. So I continue to do that and try to help a few businesses along the way to find that profitable growth and continue to do better for themselves and to grow their people and their organizations, and just try to help where I can.
Well, Lynn, it is our privilege to continue to follow you and where you're taking some of Price leadership and how you're affecting some of these companies that can truly benefit from what their future not just looks like, but needs to look like. So that sounds fantastic. Is there anything else that, if you were to send a message to the group that is listening, chiefpricingofficer.com, those that are continuing to strive to provide price leadership, and those who are coming up through the ranks, is there any advice that you'd give them?
I have all kinds of advice. It's just what's of the most value? I think the key is to continue to learn, and you have to be able to communicate. You cannot just get locked into the analytics. You cannot get just locked into the technologies, et cetera. You have to be able to communicate, and you have to be able to have empathy for whoever's in your organization in a different function who may not be where you're at in their level of understanding about where you want or where you think the business should go. And that's a little bit of a emotional intelligence level that doesn't always present itself in our profession, because I mean we are STEM people. I mean we are. we and there's I am too, but you have to have that level of understanding and appreciation for where other people are at. And over the years, this is something I learned. It's not something that I knew, and it's a challenge that I think that most leaders in these in these pricing functions in these organizations, you probably face it. So having that empathy to understand where others in the organization are at and taking the time, and I'm saying this is not sending emails, this is talking to people. Don't be afraid to talk to people, and just it's not and you don't have to be intimidating. And it used to be one of the requirements that I had in my recruiting of our pricing people. I said, look, when you've got to have the business acumen, you've got to know how to make money. That's a given. You've got to have some analytical capability. The most important thing is you've got to be able to communicate it. When you put all three of those things together, you will be successful. And the communication means that you've got to be able to communicate the ideas that are inside you and inside your teams, all the way from the CEO. And I used to say it goes from the CEO all the way to the guy sweeping the floor in the plant or at the warehouse or the parking lot, whatever you got. If you can do that, you will be successful, because the idea selling is hardest part of selling in this whole thing. It's not selling your products or service, it's selling the ideas. And if you can communicate it and you sell the ideas, you will be successful and your career will grow.
Sage advice, Lynn. Appreciate that. Appreciate you taking the time with us today. This is all I had. I really, again, thank you for taking the time. And with that, we will look for continued great things from Lynn Guinn in the marketplace. We appreciate it. We'll be talking to you soon.
Thanks, John. I enjoyed the conversation.
All right. Take care.